I always love when we bring Aaron Torres on these Fridays because we've been bringing him on. And I always like talking with AT no matter what. But
yes,
I can kind of we do our game day picks for this weekend to start the second hour. So this is 30 minutes before we have to publicly put out our picks. So I sort of balance some of the things I'm thinking against what AT thinks because I think he's smarter and probably better informed than I am.
Yeah.
Exactly, and he knows this too because he's won and lost for me on a number of occasions. He's the host. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
How do you think I feel? How do you think I feel, Phil?
Exactly. Well, I mean, and I'm not the only person that would say this when when you publicly put out, here's who I'm picking. You just gotta own it. How you doing today, AT?
I'm doing well, man. I'm doing well. It is really funny though, right, Phil? That's the whole thing, right? Is that when the picks are going good, everyone's like, "Oh my God, you're amazing," blah blah. And when the picks go bad, and they've been a little south, they've been a little sour the last few weeks. Not gonna lie, like Arkansas, I got to turn things around here a little bit.
Yes.
But and then all of a sudden, come on, bro, what are you doing? And it's like, dude, it's like, make your own decisions. What I always like to say is, let me see where your picks are so we can compare, so I can use them next time. And it's always those guys. It's always those guys, Phil. It's always those guys.
Well, and this Tennessee-Arkansas game is one of those that I kind of agree with you when I look on your site, AaronTorresOnline.com. I don't know why Tennessee comes on the road as a favorite at all, considering what's happened the last 3 weeks. I'm not sure which way you would lean on who wins this one or not, but I was really floored that Tennessee opened as a favorite. The line has barely moved. I haven't put my pick out there yet, but I'm leaning towards an Arkansas win. What do you think about this one with the Vols and Hogs?
No, I think it's exactly right, and it's really funny, Phil. I was doing a Tennessee show earlier this week, and they asked me the same thing, why are we favored? And it was right around the time that on Jeremy Pruitt's radio show, he announced that, yes, Jarrett Garantano is back starting this weekend for Tennessee, and who's the least happy about that? It's not Arkansas fans, it's Tennessee fans, and so the only thing I would say is that historically Tennessee has improved out of a bye, but I also think under most circumstances and normal years they've played the toughest part of their schedule, and the schedule softens up in the second half. This year they still have at Arkansas, they have Texas A&M, and they have Florida. And obviously, look, I'm not saying Arkansas is on the level of those other two programs, but obviously stylistically with the way they've been playing defense in general, I could see it being tough for Tennessee, which is a turnover-prone team, to move the ball. On top of that, I would also just add that Arkansas's offense, I thought showed real signs of progress last week. Obviously, defense didn't live up to its end of the bargain, but I thought I saw some improvement from Arkansas out of the bye last week on the offensive side of the football that I don't know that I was expecting, which is another reason why I, would lean with you, Phil, that I like Arkansas this weekend.
Can you help me out with the Pac-12 a little bit? Because they start tomorrow, their 6-game schedule. I haven't read up enough on these schools. I know USC and Oregon are probably the cream of the crop. We've got Arizona State and USC on our picks, and I'm not sure which way to go here. Where do you lean on that one?
Well, first of all, I would encourage everybody, the most recent Aaron Torres podcast, I actually did that exact thing. Is I was like, I know nobody's thought about Pac-12 football here in 11 months, so, let me just give you a quick rundown of what happened last year. With the USC-Arizona State game, I think it's interesting. First of all, fun fact, I don't know if we have any Bengals fans listening, but Marvin Lewis is Arizona State's defensive coordinator, so they got that going for them. How do you like them apples, Phil? They're getting the band back together. It's Las Vegas over there in ASU with Herm Edwards and Marv Lewis, but what I would say, I'm very intrigued by USC from this perspective, and I'm not comparing the two programs in terms of success, but what I've seen when I watched Ohio State this year is a team that fought so hard for this season that I feel like they've played with a chip on their shoulder in the 2 games that we've seen them. They want to prove why they fought so hard for this season. And in the Pac-12, believe it or not, USC, despite the fact that it's been a couple down years, that program probably fought harder than anybody in the Pac-12 for a season. And so I'm just genuinely intrigued. I mean, obviously the catch here is, for people who haven't seen the schedule, we got a 9 a.m. Pacific time kickoff at the Coliseum. So, I'm with you, Phil. I'm really excited to watch USC. I think they're obviously the most talented program in the conference. I thought they trended in the right direction the second half of last season with Graham Harrell as their offensive coordinator. And like I said, do we get them with a chip on their shoulder this weekend to prove, hey, there's a reason that we fought for this Pac-12 season?
Aaron Torres here with us on halftime. Do you think there's a scenario where USC could run the table if they go undefeated to maybe push for a CFP appearance? Or do you think it's out of the not necessarily out of the realm of possibility, but it's going to take a lot to get a Pac-12 team into the college football playoff?
I think it's the most interesting question as we enter, frankly, the second half of the college football season, even though the Pac-12 is just kicking off. I think it's a fascinating question, Matt. And, maybe by, next Saturday night, everybody has a loss and it's a moot point. But, I tend to believe that the committee will give the benefit of the doubt to the teams that have been doing this since July and August with no shutdown. I don't know how, if Notre Dame splits their 2 games with Clemson, obviously likely winning this weekend, how do you give a team that's been practicing and playing really since July, how do you not give them the advantage over one that didn't even put on pads until the middle of October, So to me, I think it's the most fascinating question. I would say it has to work on both ends, Matt. One, it has to work on the end that you referenced. Is a Pac-12 team actually has to go undefeated, and we'll see if that happens. But the other thing is, somebody's got to emerge as a fourth team out of the other conferences, and I think we all kind of agree it's probably not going to come from the Big 12. The SEC East, either Georgia or Florida will be eliminated by the end of this weekend. What would a 9-1 A&M team look like? What would a 10-2 Georgia look like if their only losses were to Alabama? I don't know. I tend to think that, again, the benefit of the doubt would go to one of those teams. But, if Notre Dame gets blown out twice by Clemson, that's probably not good for their chances at getting that spot. Same with any Big 12 team that doesn't run the table from this point out. And then, obviously, it's kind of the same with, like I said, whoever wins that Georgia-Florida game this weekend.
You're seeing a lot of college basketball teams right now starting to announce their conference schedules and non-conference schedules, and the SEC was no exception. Announcing the non-conference portion yesterday was the Razorbacks, and then obviously coming out today with the conference portion of the schedule. And the Hogs open up at Auburn in conference play, and just looking at their schedule, they get a lot of their tough road games done in the opening portion of the schedule, traveling to Auburn, to Tennessee, to LSU, and then later in conference play, traveling to Kentucky. But bringing up Kentucky, I saw your tweet earlier. Kentucky's non-conference and conference schedule is absolutely brutal this season.
Yeah, they have a lot of the prearranged tournaments. So, obviously everyone's in the Big 12 SEC Challenge. They get Texas, which should be a good team this year. They play in the Champions Classic, which traditionally opens the season. They have to play Kansas and then UCLA. So they play a really, really, really tough schedule. And I was kind of surprised on the inverse with Arkansas that it looked like a pretty light schedule yesterday that was released. And I haven't heard Coach Muss talk about it. I haven't talked to anybody over there as to why it may have been. But I do wonder if it's a sentiment that I'm hearing more and more across college basketball, Matt, which is I think the goal is really to just get in as many games as possible.
Yep.
I don't want to be a Debbie Downer about college basketball, but when we look at some of the stuff going on in college football, obviously the Cal stuff that broke yesterday, what's going on at Wisconsin, I think people are increasingly realizing we just got to get in as many games in college basketball as we can and try to get a tournament. So, what it means for Arkansas specifically, I don't know. I'm just curious because I know Coach Muscle loves to challenge himself out of conference, and for the most part, it felt like a pretty tame out-of-conference schedule that was released yesterday.
Just real quick, and for those of you that haven't heard the non-conference schedule, a lot of these matchups are very regional for Arkansas. Open up against Mississippi Valley State. Then you got games against North Texas, UT Arlington, Lipscomb, at Tulsa, Central Arkansas coming to Fayetteville for the first time in 70 years, Oral Roberts, and Abilene Christian. I think, and I don't know, I haven't looked at many of the other non-conference schedules for other SEC teams. Biggest takeaway I've got, it's regional. All these matchups are within driving distance or team buses or a quick one-day flight back and forth.
Yeah, and I think it's going to be really interesting to see if all of these out-of-conference games, and like I said, I do wonder if Coach Muss is really realizing, hey, let's get teams on a bus. In some cases, teams might not even have to stay at the hotel the night before. I'll tell you this really quick, Maddie. I was texting with somebody in the MAC this weekend as MAC football returned. I know of at least one program, and I don't know if it's the entire conference, MAC football, one team is not spending a single night in a hotel this season as they play college football, as in they're driving out every morning, driving back every night for their road games. And so, I think when we think about college basketball, listen, I love these great games, right? These early season games, Kansas, Kentucky, this, that, the other thing, whatever. But I think, what we're seeing with these out-of-conference tournaments where everybody has different testing protocols is that it's becoming increasingly more challenging to get these games played. I mean, I don't know if you saw this, but the big South Dakota tournament, Duke pulled out earlier, Utah pulled out, and then Ohio State pulled out. And I bring it up because we saw the Orlando bubble kind of pop. We saw some other stuff. And what I'm hearing behind the scenes is, there's some conferences like the Big 12, like the SEC, that have looser testing restrictions that say, we don't want to do it that way because we haven't been doing it that way, and it's worked out fine for us. And then we have other conferences that have much tighter testing restrictions that are like, no, we're not going to do it your way. You're going to do it our way. And so I'm bringing all that full circle to say, I just wonder from Arkansas's perspective, from Coach Muss's perspective, is he just sitting there saying, let's get games in, let's bring teams to Fayetteville, we could test them on the way in, or whatever Arkansas' specific policy is going to be, I don't know. But I think, Matt, one of the big stories that we could hear in these coming weeks is more and more of these big out-of-conference games don't get figured out because the testing protocols vary so much from not only team to team, but really conference to conference. And I think Coach Muss might be ahead of the curve again in the reason in which he made the schedule the way he did. I don't know that, but I think that might be the case.
Aaron, we'll leave it there. Always appreciate your expertise, your thoughts, and opinions. And we'll be listening to the latest Aaron Torres Sports podcast, and look forward to having you on next week.
Thanks, AT.
Don't appreciate the picks lately, Phil. It's okay. I noticed that one. It's okay. I see where you went there. No, I'm kidding. Thanks, guys. Have a good day.
Appreciate it.
You got it, AT.